Okay, welcome everybody to this session on mental health advocacy at work and helping break down those barriers. My name is Jo and I am a leadership training consultant and I work for People Unboxed. And I'm joined today by Rich, who couldn't stay away because it's such an important subject. So I'm just going to pass you over to Rich and he'll introduce himself.
Yeah, hello team. It's good to be here. I had a last minute cancellation and I just couldn't stay away from such an important subject. It's great to see, actually. It's great to see some mental health first aiders that I've worked with, but also maybe ones that I haven't, and also some people that have done some leadership programs as well, because I feel this subject is intrinsically linked to both. So do make sure you're paying attention, buckle in for the next, 56 minutes if we're going to be pedantic, so you get the most out of it. I'm going to pass over to Jo now to kick things off. Over to you, Jo.
Okay, so just to let you all know, if you haven't noticed, we are recording this session today. So it's because we want to be able to upload it to our website afterwards, for people to access who couldn't attend in person. So this session is designed to help you understand what mental health is and how we can encourage people to talk about their own mental health and ask for help if they need it. There are many reasons that prevent someone sharing about their mental health condition with their managers or colleagues. So we're going to look at how we can encourage people to self-disclose and enable that supportive environment. Now, if we ignore mental health in the workplace, we run the risk of ignoring what our people need and therefore not looking after them as we should, which of course leads then to lower productivity, lower engagement, sick days, and underperformance. Mental well-being can change throughout our lifetime, and there may be a time where the content that we cover today proves helpful for you on a personal level as well as a professional level. In terms of interaction, so like we say, you won't have access to the mic or switching your cameras on, but please use the chat function and get involved. We're going to have poll questions, so I encourage you all to get involved in them, and we'll be making the most of that to encourage some further conversations. This session is still designed to be interactive, however, and you're going to learn from each other as much as you're going to learn from me and Rich today. We've got some emojis, we love them, so use them for interactions too. And as I've mentioned, we are recording it, so you'll find this on our website in a few days, so you can refer back to that. And also, we're going to send you a post-webinar email, and that'll come to you all on Monday. And it's going to include a PDF of these slides that you're going to see today, because we don't expect you to be able to retain all of this information straight away. So it gives you a reference to go back to. So, first of all, we're going to start by checking understanding of mental health versus mental illness. And then I'm going to pass you over to Rich, and he's going to take you through why people find it difficult to self-disclose when it comes to mental health struggles and how stigma plays a part in this. Then we're going to be looking at breaking down that stigma to support with fostering a more inclusive and supportive workplace where mental health is valued. And we know that bias can feed into stigma, and we all have them. So we're going to take a look at recognizing and challenging these biases. And then we're going to talk about psychological safety, what it is and why it's key to encouraging mental health self-disclosure within the workplace. And then finally, Rich is going to be taking you through how you can become mental health advocacy, and we're going to be able to support people to feel comfortable within all of this. But the most important thing for today is a safe environment. This is a subject that's really important to us all. And I want you to know that this is a very safe environment to be able to be open and talk about things. We've all got such different experiences, so we need to respect that when we're talking about all of these different experiences throughout the next hour. We've all got different backgrounds. We've all got different life experiences and beliefs. So please respect those opinions, like I've just said, even if it differs from your own, because it's a perfect opportunity to learn from each other's experiences. So throughout the next hour, I want you to have the mindset of what more can I do? And by the end of the session, I want you to be able to have something you can change or commit to that will not only help your own mental health and well-being, but also those of your colleagues around you. So take notes of any practical actions that you can take back to your role as we go through this session, and we'll recap the next steps at the end. So my expectations for all of you is to focus for the next hour. Switch off all of the distractions that may happen, and this is such an important subject. And I know you're all going to agree on that because you've joined us for this session today. This is about focusing on solutions for mental health and embedding change. So first of all, we're going to check that understanding of mental health. So first time, I'm going to ask you all the question now. I'm going to ask that you put it into the chat. Does anyone know the difference between mental health and mental illness? What do you think? What's the difference? What's the difference between the two references? What do you think about when we talk about mental health? Okay, Ashley, fabulous. We all have mental health, but mental illness is diagnosable illness. Yes, yes, we all have mental health. And is that consistent? What do we think about that? Mental health illness is being diagnosed. Thank you, Kelly. And what do we think about mental health? Is that consistent or can it change? Mental health is an illness condition. Mental health is a how you are feeling. Thank you, Paul. Mental health can be good and bad. Excellent. Thank you, Emma. Oh, and we're getting those thumbs up now. We love that. So you've also got emojis. So if you do see any comments that you agree with, then you can totally give somebody the thumbs up and encourage you. Thank you. Mental health can change. Yeah, it changes all of the time. Yes, it totally does. So let's have a little look at this further. So when it comes to mental health, this includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and how we act. Everybody has mental health. Kelly, yes, everything can affect your mental health. And totally. And thank you for that comment. There are stuff, and it'll be different for every single person because we are all individuals. So I want you all to think about this. When I say the word health to you, you wouldn't think anything of it. But if I say mental health, there is often a negative connotation to it. So if we consider our mental health like our physical health, we're all going to have ups and downs. And it depends on what's going on in our lives, like we pointed out in the chat. And in the same way as physical health, we will not always be up on our top form. It depends what's going on in our lives at that time. And just because we've taken a dip in our mental health, it doesn't mean then we have a mental illness. It just means we need to look at what's going on in our lives and see what factors are affecting that dip. Examples of this could be we're not getting enough sleep. We know how that can affect us. Or we maybe aren't asking for help if we can't cope with what's going on around us. Mental illness is when we experience changes to our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, and relationships, and it can affect how we function day to day. It's not always curable, but it is treatable. So it's not necessarily a life sentence. And with the right support, people can get better and live normal lives. It's important that we don't label them and write them off. So I'm sure you can all relate to this, either personally or through people that we know, that our mental health can have a huge impact on us inside and outside of work. I'm sure plenty of you within this webinar can relate to that. It's important to know if a colleague has a mental health condition so we can get them support should they need it. However, it can be really difficult for people to feel safe enough to say when they need that support. And we need to understand why that may be so that we can have empathy and create the correct environment. And this is now what Rich is going to take you through. So over to you, Rich.
Thanks, Joe. And whilst I'm talking, I believe my camera isn't on, but do do know, team, that I am here with you. Joe's going to work on that in the background to see if we can get my camera up. In the meantime, just speaking to a point that Joe just made around the mental health versus mental illness, it's really good to see that we've got a good grasp of that within the chat, right? We obviously know that. However, quite a lot of the people we're working with who maybe haven't had as much exposure or much interest around the subject might not know this. So it's always a really good one to reintroduce. That said, because I know some people have previously done that, we're now going to go into some new content, and that is going to be all around self-disclosure, because this for me is key. We need to encourage self-disclosure when someone is struggling at work, and that can be a challenge due to different barriers. And this is where I want to bring you in. Okay, so I want to pose you a question with regards to this. So what could be some barriers to self-disclosure? So I'll just sit there for a bit, team, and type into the chat, what stops people from self-disclosure? Yes, Sarah, straight off the bat there, fear. Completely agree with that, and linked quite closely to that, Emma, the embarrassment of it. Absolutely. Yeah, the shame. Yeah, quite visceral words here, isn't it? And yeah, being judged, Colin, this is really good. Hi, Monica. Yeah, judgment. That's exactly the point. Yeah, fail. Yeah, almost seen as failure, isn't it? But more than that, so we're looking at it through the lens in the first instance of the individual. But yeah, now we're starting to look through stigma. What about through the lens of the place of work that they're in? Not saying that this is your place of work, but their perception is their reality. So yes, Paul, we're starting to get into this bit as well. Yeah, the impact in terms of their career, that could be of a real concern to them. Any other ideas why people potentially might not disclose? Yeah, Kelly, that's a really good one, isn't it? Yeah, they don't want to burden anyone. You often hear that, don't you, when someone tells you that retrospectively, "Oh, I was really suffering here." They say, "Yeah, yeah, why don't you come and tell me?" They say, "Oh, I didn't want to burden anyone." So yeah, that's a really, really good point. Okay, so some really good points there. There are more, and that's what I want to talk to now, and we've got it on the screen. So first and foremost, yeah, the career impact concerns about job security. Whilst it is protected, but that maybe doesn't feel that way, doesn't it? And as a result, they might feel they're going to miss out on promotions, or it's going to alter their responsibilities. Equally, they might be coming to work to take away from that mental health concern or issue that they have. There is that lack of trust as well, lack of trust in management, but also HR, concerns over confidentiality, or fear there's subtle retaliations which can then deter them from opening up. But also, as completely mentioned there by Kelly, not wanting to burden others. I'm going to internalize it, and that could be through their upbringing or their understanding of mental health is a private issue, and therefore I don't want to burden anyone else. Why would I bring people down with me? It could be personal or cultural beliefs that builds on that as well. So I don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want to be seen or perceived as weak or failed, whatever that is. So therefore, I'm going to keep it locked up and not tell anyone. Also, culturally as well, we have to consider the cultural implications of it. If we're going to be honest as well, one point that we didn't put in the chat, maybe a lack of resources, lack of clear policies, lack of structure, not knowing where to go if they have got a problem. And then finally, and the last point here, past negative experiences, that doesn't necessarily have to be within your place of work either. That can be from past experience within school, college, university, their first employers, within personal relationships. And because of that, they think, "Do you know what? I'm not going to tell anyone here. I just want to keep it safe." And yet, all what we've just explored there is a reason why some people might not ask for support, even though they need it. So you yourself, you might be able to resonate with one or more of these points, and whether that be on a personal level or a personal friend, colleague, family member has had those experience. And if you have a look at all of these barriers, it can come apparent when there is two things here, which is an environment of stigma, which was mentioned in the chat perfectly, but then also a lack of psychological safety, which is what I want to talk to just briefly now before we start to dive in a little bit deeper. So how do all these points link together? Well, if there is a mental health stigma, which I'll get to for those that aren't familiar with it shortly, and judgment within the workplace, then individuals are going to be too afraid to talk about how they feel and what is going on with their mental health and their concerns around it. They're going to be worried about it impacting their career. They're going to be worried about being judged, ostracized, isolated. They're going to worry about a lot more than just those two things. It's not exclusive, but those are some of those things. And if they've had a past negative experience, well, guess what? They're going to shut up shop and batten down the hatches. On top of that, and we will talk again about psychological safety for anyone who's new to the concept, but if there is a lack of psychological safety, that can mean a lack of trust with the management. It could mean the company haven't prioritized the well-being of the team, so they haven't focused on offering support and resources. And there's that lack of inclusion. There's a lack of being able to speak up. And so people don't feel comfortable to say, hey, I'm struggling. And that obviously all has a negative impact on someone's mental well-being. So we'll look at both of them now. I'm going to explore mental health and the stigma around that, and then Joe's shortly going to explore psychological safety. So let's now have a look quickly at the mental health stigma. And this, for me, it can't be underrated. We talk about it within our mental health first aid sessions, our mental health well-being sessions. I feel this is something that really can be explored. If you're looking for some top tips to take away, this is something that can be explored with your team if you are the mental health advocate there. And it's key reason as to why people don't feel comfortable to come forward and express how they feel. They might be worried about being judged. They might be worried about job safety, about career progression. So let's explore what stigma is. And for me, there is two types of stigma. So there's the social stigma, which includes the negative attitudes and the discriminatory behaviors that we see in society that's held towards mental health problems. Joe alluded to it earlier, didn't they? There is a negative connotation around the word mental when it's paired with health, and that is part of the stigma. So that's the social stigma. Self-stigma, well, that's where people believe what's being said about their condition and agree with society's viewpoint, and then it starts to spiral. And then we start to see people really moving down that mental health continuum towards a mental health illness. So I'm going to get Joe to launch a quick poll all around stigma. And I want you to sit there and think about this and answer honestly. This is anonymous, by the way. Have you seen or experienced stigma within your workplace? So you should see the poll pop up now, and I'd love for you to answer that. And then make sure you click submit. I'll give you a few moments, and then Joe, you let me know when it's ready to be published, and we can get it up on the screen and people can see what the answers look like.
No problem at all. We've got 50% answered. A few more coming through.
Perfect. Yes, please, team. Keep interacting.
Yeah, a few more to go. Okay, that's it. So I am a few more coming in now. 70% of you have now answered. Give you a second for a few more of you to put it in.
Yeah, give them the countdown timer, Joe.
Right, let's see. And here are the results.
There we go. Yeah, so 75% of the people that answered saying yeah, 25% saying no. Interestingly, no one saying maybe. So we're either saying yes, we have seen it, or we haven't. For those that have seen it, what does it look like specifically within a workplace? What things are we going to be looking for? Because if we're going to break some barriers down into how we can get people to self-disclose, then we need to be aware of the negative behaviors, actions that we might see. so that we can then challenge them. So type into the chat, what does stigma look like? And I do appreciate that it takes you longer to type than it does for me to talk. So I'm sure you're all frantically typing some answers. Here we go. Yeah, Emma, that is such a good point to start off. And people, if you agree with that point, if you feel that that's relevant, do use the emojis to back Emma's point up there. Yeah, older generation colleagues having the opinion that people should just get on with it. Okay, and that, yeah, so it's that generational change. And on top of that, that's the experience. Yeah, lots of people just agreeing with that. Copy and paste Emma's answer. Gold star to Emma, please, Joe, when you've got one a second. So yeah, absolutely. And you know what? That comes from that lack of education, that lack of awareness, doesn't it? And the good news is I feel that quite a lot of times when I'm delivering a mental health first aid session, the older generation say, I'm here because I want to be educated. I know I need to change. Now that's not always the case, but it's that educational piece there. Ashley saying about the attitudes for managers who feel they're already doing this right. Yeah, that lack of awareness, and that again can come down to training. The RO when someone phones in regarding their mental health, and yeah, Kelly, I have to admit, many years ago now, when I was in one of my first ever managerial roles in a leisure centre, I was one of those person, and it makes me cringe now. It makes me cringe now to think about it. Um, yeah, because and you know what? To Kelly and Sarah's point, it's it's not just the implications because that person can't see it, right? If they've called up, um, but it's the ripple effects around the team who see that. That's the key there, because then that impacts the stigma around that as well. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I'm embarrassed to say I was guilty of that many moons ago, but now since education, awareness, and understanding has certainly challenged that. Let's think about a couple of other reasons as well before we move on around how we can break that. I think it's uh, yeah, so it's behavior, it's subtle language as well. I think what it looks like is ostracizing that person because people don't necessarily understand them or relate to them. They then get ostracized. And hey, good news, team. Since many moons ago, when I was guilty of fueling the fire of stigma, if you were, we are moving forward. This is where I genuinely believe we are making progress, slow progress, but we are making progress. Mental health and well-being awareness is increasing. More people are starting to talk about it. You've probably seen, I mean, it's on the bottom of the slide, but seen the hashtag "It's okay not to be okay." But there is still a hangover from the stigma that existed years ago. And whilst it's improving, it can still be a barrier to many and stop people talking about how they feel. So, first things first, for us, the people who are on this session, let's challenge our own stigma and that of others, because in this time of need, it's going to be more and more important, more important that now than ever, I think, to start conversations, to find out if people are okay and if they need a helping hand. And it is great to recognize what mental health stigma looks like, but it's equally important to know how to challenge it, which is the second question now. So, how can we make it okay not to be okay, as the hashtag says? How can we challenge stigma within the workplace? Not just the people who are in the position of power to do so, the leadership team, the HR team, but also on an individual basis. So let's look for those different lenses. Really enjoying the interaction through the chat today. So keep that up. So the question being, how can we challenge stigma within the workplace? How can we break it? How can we leave a mark on it? I'll leave you to type into the chat. And let's see what answers we've got. And do remember, as Joe mentioned, do remember to make and take notes on any points you think, you know what, this is really relevant for me or for my organization, for my team of mental health and wellbeing advocates. We can take this away because that's what this session is all around. It's all around giving practical advice. And I really enjoy the peer-to-peer learning element as well. Yeah, open door sessions completely, Kelly. Yeah, I like that as a suggestion, having an open door policy where people can come in and talk about it, talk about anything really, because it all roads lead to it. Um, yeah, action speaks louder than the word, right, Ashley? So showing actions towards that, I completely agree with those. So but Sarah, building on top of that, really nice segue into this, to be willing to be open and available for others. Vulnerability is not a weakness. Vulnerability is a strength. If you're into your leadership, Brené Brown, Daring Leadership, it is a key component of it, vulnerability, and that is about being willing to be open and available to others, and also saying, look, you know what, this has happened to me, as well as I want to hear what's happened to you as well. Talk more about it. So yeah, Phil, agree with that. Toolbox talks. Yeah, I really like that, Emma, and I know you've put that into place. I think that's really useful. We have a walk and talk morning. Love the idea of a walk and talk. Boys that walk will talk. That's a whole initiative. Not just saying it has to be exclusive for the male population, but often people have a different perspective when they're walking, and they open up. Really nice suggestion there. Consistency with communication, yeah, and updated communication, so it doesn't just become wallpaper. And yeah, so yeah, Sarah, if you like that vulnerability piece, Brené Brown, Daring Leadership, and she actually has a free self-assessment on there on her website, which shows you where your opportunities are if you are within the leadership sphere. Okay, yep, some really good points. Joe, do you mind just showing some ideas around how we can break the stigma as well? Just reveal that on the slide to show. Yeah, so I've talked about it before, but yeah, making sure we are educated and we promote that awareness around the stigma. I think as well, normalizing the conversation we've touched on, authentic leaders and leadership. I think that's where we've got a client, or actually a partnership with an organization, and their CEO actually went through a case of bereavement and was really vulnerable and talked about it to the point where it really did gel his team together. So in the right moment, I really do think authentic leadership really does help to break the stigma as well. Top down approach, so to speak. Challenging appropriate behavior, and not in a way that's aggressive, as in you need to stop doing that. Try and get them to see why it's wrong, and that's where those lunch and learns, those toolbox talks can really help. Offer flexibility. Quite often, the reason why mental health problems and issues arise is because there's a lack of flexibility around work. So allow mental health days, flexible hours wherever possible, showing that mental health needs are respected, and it's a proactive rather than reactive approach as well in most of the cases. And try and address, going back to the inappropriate behaviors, address language and stereotypes, which is something which I think is important, and I'm going to allow Joe to talk to that momentarily. But these steps, if we put these steps in and we're disciplined to them, and we have the courage to challenge negative behavior or language or actions, then that's going to encourage a more inclusive and supportive workplace where mental health is valued. And so, Joe, I'm going to invite you now to talk a little bit more about challenging those mental health biases. Over to you.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, so what we're going to have a look at now is perception bias, and we're going to look at what it is and how we can challenge it. So perception bias is also known as stereotyping. And when it comes to mental health, perception bias can lead us to make quick judgments, like assuming somebody with depression is just lazy, or believing a certain mental health condition make people dangerous. These assumptions, even if they're unintentional, can fuel stigma, and it can prevent people from asking for help, and it can even shape how we treat that person. So by exploring perception bias, we can start to uncover and challenge these automatic thoughts. And it's not about blaming ourselves for having these biases. We all have them. We're human, and that's how our brains work. But what is important is that we become aware of them. That way, then, we can take steps towards being more fair, empathic, and informed. Because if we don't become aware of them, they will come out within our behaviours, and that is why it's important to have that awareness. And as I say, then take some steps. So we're going to take a closer look now at how perception bias works and how it may show up within our views when it comes to mental health. So firstly, it presents within a stereotyping and stigmatization. People with mental health conditions may be unfairly labelled as unstable, unreliable, or incapable. And these labels can influence how colleagues and managers perceive their performance and behaviour, even if they're able to perform just as well as everybody else. Perception bias can cause others to link a patient's actions or emotions to their mental health condition rather than to external factors. So, for example, if a person with depression appears withdrawn, people might make the assumption it's due to their mental health rather than a completely unrelated stressor. And this is what we call attribution bias. If somebody is aware of a person's mental health diagnosis, they may focus on behaviours that align with those stereotypes associated with that condition and therefore reinforcing their own beliefs. So, for instance, if we know someone who suffers with anxiety, they may interpret nervousness as a symptom of that anxiety, even if it's completely unrelated. And that is known as confirmation bias. So it's where we look for things that align with our beliefs, confirmation. People may also reduce expectations of individuals with mental health conditions, and you may have seen this happen before, because they assume they're less capable or competent. And then, of course, those biases are going to lead to fewer opportunities for those people, and that limits their growth, and therefore, again, reinforces that stigma that we've been speaking about. Perception bias can also lead to a lack of empathy, and others may even downplay the individual's experiences or struggles, viewing them as not serious, or dismissing mental health issues as personality traits rather than legitimate health concerns. And we know this as empathy bias. Overcoming perception bias does require education, awareness, and fostering an environment that focuses on individual strengths rather than the assumptions we make about mental health condition. And we're all going through this journey together. There'll be times where you're probably recognizing some of these biases appearing within yourself in the past, maybe even recently. But what's great is that we want to make a difference, and that's why you're all here today. And by taking that first step means that we're making a positive difference because we're educating and increasing our awareness, and that then enables us to go and put some of these things in practice to improve these biases in the future. Because like I say, we've all got them. It's part of being a human being. So this is why it's so important for us to be aware of our biases. If we're not aware, then we may be treating somebody less favorably or putting them at a disadvantage without us even realizing we're doing it. We need to become more aware of what they are, and we also need to manage it so we're not affecting other people in that negative way. So now we're all thinking about this. What are some of the common stereotypes about those with a mental illness? Let's pop them into a chat. What are some of the common stereotypes that we're aware of about people with mental illness? What have we heard before? What have we maybe thought ourselves in the past? Yep, definitely. That's a common stereotype, Ashley. Thank you. There's stereotypes out there that people can be dangerous. Yep. Laziness. Yep. That'll pop up as well. Not able to do their job. So we know that somebody's been diagnosed and we just make that assumption straight away. Not yeah, and that pops up quite a lot as well, Kelly, that people just lie about it because they want an easy time, an easy ride, that they can be unfriendly. Yes, yes, totally. And people make assumptions that they don't want to be part of the team and put that stereotypes into there. Yes, that they can be unfriendly and don't want to be part of the team. Common stereotype. Thank you, Rachel. Yet another one is that they're incapable. Yep, different from me, Ashley. Yep, different. So these are all really common stereotypes that you've all maybe come across before. Any others?
Loving the interaction from the chat,
No.
Joe. It's so, people are so switched on. It's really nice to see, even over the few years that we've been delivering mental health, just how much more awareness around this subject there is, and how much more passion there is. So it's really good to see. Keep it up, team, and do use the emojis to agree with certain points as well.
Yeah. That's great work's been done over the years, like you all agree, but there's still a lot of work that can be done. And I say it's great to see how passionate you all are about this subject, just like myself and Rich are. That they're being difficult, yeah, another common stereotype as well. Untreatable, yep, another common stereotype out there. And that this will be the person's constant new normal. Yes, exactly, Colin. We just assume that that is it now. Um, Excellent. So yeah, thank you all for that interaction. And you've covered most of these, if not all of them. So many people believe those with mental health issues lack willpower or determination. And some people will think that people with mental health issues are less capable or reliable within their work. Discussions about mental health struggles are often viewed as dramatic or people attention seeking. And like we pointed out here as well, the belief that mental health issues are permanent causes people to overlook the potential for recovery and management. And also, people tend to treat mental health conditions as if they're uniform, forgetting the fact that everybody is different and we're all individuals, and there is a lot of diversity and individual differences in experiences when it comes to mental health conditions. And like we pointed out a couple of times now, conditions like depression and anxiety are often mistaken for laziness or self-indulgent. And also, we need to be aware that stereotypes can vary by age and gender too, such as young people being seen as overly dramatic or men being seen as unable to express vulnerability. So challenging these stereotypes again through education and having open discussions and being comfortable to have those open discussions can help reduce that stigma. And what it does then is it fosters a more supportive environment for mental health awareness. And like I said a couple of minutes ago, it is getting better, but we've still got a long journey ahead of us, and we've got a lot of work to do on this to help become more supportive. So let's take a look now at areas that we can reflect on and consider when challenging these biases and making that difference. So there's a few things on here. So we can provide education and training, like we've mentioned a couple of times. And a couple of ways to do this are we can conduct training on mental health stigma and bias. So people know that they have these things, we have biases, we're human, so they can recognize it then. Uh, All biases are different because we're all individuals. So having that training, they can recognize their own perceptions and start to challenge them. And also we can educate staff on misconceptions about mental health, like we've just seen. And again, that will help reduce those biases down too. Open conversations are so important, and we need to make people feel comfortable to be able to do that and have these open conversations. And a couple of ways we can do this is we can create safe spaces for employees to share experiences, and then you can humanize those mental health struggles. And the more we talk about it, the more we realize that most people go through this, and we can help and support each other, but we need to talk about it more. And we can model empathy as well. And we can do that through empathic communication around mental health. We can really try to put ourselves in that other person's shoes so we can understand. We can also use inclusive language as well, and this helps challenge bias. So encouraging respectful language and avoiding those negative labels when we talk about mental health. And we can reframe conversations as well, which helps with this inclusive language. So we can focus on strengths instead of those mental health labels that we've just seen. Want to normalise mental health support just as much as we do with physical health support, and we can do that by encouraging resource access. We can make seeking mental health support a normalised practice, like taking mental health days away from work. We can also highlight success stories as well. So we can share examples of people thriving despite mental health challenges they've had, and that'll help counteract those negative assumptions that we've seen. And then finally, we can hold people accountable. We can address those biased behaviours and calling it out, and we can correct those dismissive comments and unfair assumptions. And we can do that in an assertive way. So we can do that and speak to somebody and talk to them about what you've heard, but do it in a way where they're going to be open to receive that feedback. And that way, then they'll be aware of it and we'll be comfortable to be giving each other feedback when we do notice those things pop up and we do notice any behaviors that potentially they've not noticed within themselves. So normalize giving each other feedback when it comes to this as well, so we can all grow and learn. And then also we can implement fair policies, promoting fairness in performance evaluations and opportunities as well. So that also helps challenge those biases. So what's happening is if we do these actions, it'll foster a culture that values individuals beyond mental health stereotypes and supporting that fair work environment, which we know is really important. So what I would like you all to do now is just take a moment to reflect on these points that I've just shared with you all and consider if the companies that you're working within is focusing on these areas or are there areas of opportunity. Okay, so just consider that because focusing on challenging bias and stigma means that we're creating a safe environment and we're creating an environment where people feel safe to show up to work and be themselves, safe to speak up and ask if they need any support. Okay, which is really, really important. And that is now going to lead us on to psychological safety. But as I say, just take a moment, reflect on these points and consider whether these are areas of strength within the areas that you work in, or are there any areas of opportunity where we can go back now and start to put some of these things in practice to create that area, that fair work environment. Okay, so give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Who's heard of psychological safety before? Thumbs up, thumbs down. You should be able to find the emojis in the chat. Excellent, there we go. Oh, great. So this is the subject that it looks like a few of you are familiar with. And carry on putting the thumbs up and thumbs down as I introduce you all to this subject if you've not come across it before, or we start to talk about it. And for those who are familiar, will be able to relate to this. So basically, when it comes to psychological safety, this is where people feel safe to express their ideas, opinions, speak their mind, admit mistakes, or talk about their feelings. And if people feel included, like they belong and feel heard and appreciated, then this is going to have a positive impact on their mental well-being. So we want to make the environment a psychological safe one. Amy Edmondson, who's a Harvard Business School professor, is a leading expert on psychological safety. And she defines as a shared belief that a team environment is safe for interpersonal risk taking. And her research shows that psychological safety fosters open communication, learning, and innovation. So in 1999, she'd done a study and she found that teams with high psychological safety are better at admitting mistakes, seeking feedback, and solving problems. And her later work highlights its role in enabling innovation and reducing errors, particularly in high risk industries like healthcare. And she found that more psychological safe the environment was, then people were more likely to speak up, talk about mistakes, and then you can work on them and get better fixes in the long run. So it enabled innovation and reducing errors. So what I want to ask you all now with the poll is, do you feel psychologically safe within your workplace? So let's take a look at this now. And thank you, Rich. So there's a TED Talk by Amy, and Rich has just dropped that link into the chat. You can go away and watch that. It's really good to watch to help you understand it and understand the research she's done to come to her conclusions. Okay, so we've got some answers coming through now. We've got 9 of you answered. Allow a few more for you to answer before I share the results. Okay. So we've got a mixture. So you can see on the screen, 60% answered yes, 20% said no, and 20% said maybe. So if you voted yes, that's great, but please don't make assumptions that everyone around you feels the same. And if you voted no, then reflect on what more would need to be done for you to feel safer at work. If people feel psychological safety, then they're more likely to have the confidence to talk to a colleague and ask for help, which is why it's so important. It's key to encouraging mental health self-disclosure in the workplace, and this is how it connects. A safe environment lowers fear of being judged, allowing employees to share mental health struggles without anxiety about negative perceptions. It also fosters empathy. Colleagues and managers respond supportively to disclosures, making it more likely employees will seek help or accommodations. And also feeling safe reduces the need to hide struggles. So you can be your authentic self, and that also lowers stress and promotes well-being. And when employees feel comfortable disclosing, they're more likely to use available resources, helping them manage their mental health more effectively. So open, supportive discussions around mental health become normalized as well, fostering a culture of mutual support and enhanced well-being across the team. So psychological safety enables self-disclosure, helping employees feel supported and improving overall workplace mental health. And if you'd like to take a look at this further, we've also got a free webinar within our website, and you can find that there, and it's called Psychological Safety. And I'll pop the link in for you as well, and I'll also put it in your post-course comms. As discussed with psychological safety, encouraging employees to openly discuss mental health challenges at work requires creating a safe, supportive, and stigma-free environment. And I'm going to now pass you back over to Rich, who's going to take you through some of these strategies for fostering self-disclosure about poor mental health in the work setting. Over to you, Rich.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. And yeah, what I'm also going to do as well. Well, we're giving loads away today, Joe. It's because I mentioned Brené Brown. I've now pulled up the self-assessment. It's free to do. I've put it in the chat there for you to use at a later stage, team. Just make sure you click on that and then save it for later. So yeah, what we're looking at now, the final piece of the puzzle, so to speak, before we finish our time together, is how do we advocate for a positive mental health and well-being culture? So let's break down how to encourage that environment from two viewpoints. One, organizationally, but then secondly, individually as well. So it doesn't matter what lens you're looking at through. We've hopefully got some suggestions. So let's look at these points on here. I'll break it down in a top level view. Remember, you will have these slides as well to refer back to in PDF format after today's session. So building a culture of openness and support. Well, we're going to normalize mental health conversations. We're going to promote confidentiality, which means that they feel that they are treated with respect in accordance to the company's policies and legal requirements. We're going to use non-stigmatizing language within that culture as well. The second point, we're going to train managers and leaders. We're going to equip the leaders with empathy and active listening skills. I think that's a low-hanging fruit. That's an easy lunch and learn. You can easily Google ChatGPT or ask us. You can have a really nice session around listening without judgment, without trying to fix the issue. We're also going to try and train managers and leaders, whilst not trying to make them all mental health first aiders or mental health practitioners. We are going to help them to recognize signs of strain so that they can take a proactive approach. And finally, we should encourage regular check-ins, not just about what's going on the latest with work, what's your output, how are you doing with that task, but no, how are you? And making that part of the conversation. I really do believe that should be front and center of any catch up with team members. The third point, offering flexible working arrangement. Well, providing options for flexibility so people have the options and they feel more supported, and thus they're more likely to open up. And encourage them to not only take breaks, which is really important to recharge and go again, but also the time off as well. And normalizing time off for mental health as well as physical health problems or issues. So the fourth point, create access to mental health resources. Well, yeah, we've got EAPs if you're a bigger organization, counseling, support services, but also facilitating workshops on mental health. providing information about community resources, what is out there as a low-cost alternative to an EAP. The fifth point, developing clear policies and make them known. Well, outline supportive policies, let employees know about those, and designate mental health advocates to help shout about those, not just HR. Encourage peer support and allyship. So promote peer support networks. So what's really powerful, we've seen some organizations use this in the past, get people to come together, open up and share their experiences in a confidential setting. That really does help. But also allyship, which is all around supporting one another through mental health struggles or problems. And that can create a culture where everyone feels responsible for each other's well-being. The next point, respect individual comfort levels. Well, avoid forcing disclosure. People have to be ready. We can offer them as many means and as many options to do that, but it should be on their terms, and try it within that as well to encourage anonymous feedback options, so we can allow employees to express challenges and make suggestions about mental health support without feeling like they need to disclose their identity. Finally, on this mental health advocacy for the organization, before we look at the individual, and they do entwine, celebrate and recognize effort towards mental well-being. It is a journey. We are along the way. There's more to go, and there always will be. But acknowledge when there has been good case studies, demonstrations, as long as the individual is happy to do so. But acknowledge team resilience when the times are tough. Celebrate that people are going well. Celebrate mental health awareness events. Emphasize self-care and boundaries, making sure that there is a tangible thing for people to go and take away and work towards. That's for the organization. Now let's look at the individual. So 5 points here that we want to cover, and they do speak to some of the other ones because they should complement them. So what can we do as peers? Well, start non-judgmental conversations. So normalize mental health conversations, show empathy and patience. I think patience and perseverance in conversations is what I regularly cover within sessions on mental health, and I really do mean that. Patience and perseverance, but in a soft and subtle way. Regularly check in and look out for signs of stress with your peers and your fellow workers. Encourage work-life balance and boundaries and advocate for that. Be a role model for that. So model those healthy boundaries, encourage time off where needed. Share resources. So don't just hoard it to yourself. Share it with people. Talk about it. Use it. We really do advocate for what we call an EAP Explore with the team, so they can find out what is on there rather than it just being this scary taboo place that you only go, that HR point you towards when you've got a mental health problem or concern. Act as allies as well. Don't just expect the organization to do it. Take that on board. Be an ally for the people who are around you. And then finally, going back to the previous point on organizations, respect privacy and boundaries. So don't pressure disclosure and maintain confidentiality. So keep things private unless you have a duty of care to tell someone or the emergency services about someone whose life is at risk. The final thing I want to cover is just starting a conversation. I just want to give you some top tips. This is within our mental health first aid, many of our mental health sessions. So let's just bring those points up now just to cover those. So a few points. If you are going into a conversation, take a moment to think about what you want to say and how you want to come across before you do. Try and think about, I really want to listen here. I want to ask some good non-judgmental questions to get them to open up. And on the asking point, ask twice, because we all know if someone says to you, how are you doing? The immediate response is, yeah, fine, good. Now let's move on to business. But even if you just ask, no, really, how are you? Or are you sure? So, or if they completely shut up and don't want to talk about it, that's on them. But just say, look, you know where I am when I need you. And that's that patience and perseverance piece again. So think about the different questions you could ask. And the Time to Change did a lovely piece around the importance of asking twice. When someone does tell you, well, reassure and let them know it's okay to talk about their feelings. If anything, congratulate them, because that's where we're aspiring to get to, right? That people normalize the conversation and then listen non-judgmentally without opinion, which is very hard because, as Joe just talked about, biases are there. Their unconscious biases are even harder to challenge, but listen to what's going on with them. Don't try and solutionize and think about how you can overcome it. And if you're worried about that, ask them that question before you start to solutionize. How can I help? And empathize. Try to understand what it is to be in their shoes. And although It's not easy to start a conversation. This could be the most important thing that you can do that helps to break down a barrier and extend a hand to someone that really needs it. Briefly, before we close the session, let's just look at some solutions that we can suggest or encourage, including resources. And this is more of a tick box slide so you can take away and use it, but make sure all colleagues are aware of the mental health support that is available. Make sure there is some awareness training. If you want mental health first aiders, brilliant. But if not, an awareness training is the best place to be. So CQ, cultural intelligence, especially working with others, emotional intelligence, the EQ, and then some diversity, equality, inclusion, accessibility, all this training can help as well. So making sure we have inclusion within that, well-being and psychological safety questionnaires to see where people are and the opportunity for them to feedback and feed forward into where the organizations go. EAP promoted if you have one, and the stress management and mindfulness workshops, which can be really useful as well. Some ideas to take away. Joe, I'm going to hand over to you to finish, and then if anyone wants to stay on after the hour's up, we're more than happy to take questions. Joe, over to you.
Thanks, Rich. And if you noticed, I've also dropped a link into some resources that we also have within our website, so feel free to link into that too. So it's now over to you. If you go away from this and never think about it again, then nothing will change because this formal training only accounts for 10% of the transfer of learning. You need to go away and think about how you can now bed these learns to make the most of it. Have you got any final questions for me and Rich? Any final questions on what's been covered today?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to take some questions. Do appreciate we've gone over our hour now. We knew we were going to be trying to fit in a lot, and we love the interaction. So for now, I appreciate some people might want to drop off. If not, if you want to stay on board and you're typing away to answer the questions, me and Joe will stay here to answer those because I do want to help make a dent on the mental health and well-being situation. I feel we're all doing that together. So keep trying to break those barriers, keep advocating for that change, and I'll hopefully speak with you soon. But if you need to go, you're more than welcome to. If not, stay on board and we'll keep an eye on the chat.
And thank you, everybody, for your engagement throughout the hour. It's brought a lot of value. And like Rich just said, let's now go away and help break down those barriers. I'm glad you've all enjoyed it. I hope whatever you're doing with the rest of your day, it goes well. Enjoy it. And I hope to see you again soon at some future webinars. Please join us again.
Yeah. Thanks, team.
Thank you.